You're doing fine. On paper, everything is okay. You have a job. You have people. You have routines. But inside, you're exhausted. Not the kind of exhaustion that comes from a long day. The kind that's there when you wake up. That follows you through every moment. That makes even simple tasks feel impossible. And you don't understand it. Because you're not doing anything that demanding. But Rumi would tell you, you're exhausted because you're living a life that doesn't fit your soul. And that kind of living is the most draining thing in the world. You wake up and immediately feel it. The weight. The heaviness. Not in your muscles. Not in your bones. But somewhere deeper. Somewhere you can't point to. You drag yourself out of bed, shower, get dressed, go through the motions. And every motion feels like you're moving through water. Slow, resistant, exhausting. By noon, you're already counting down the hours until you can go home. And when you finally do, when you finally collapse onto the couch, you realize you're not relieved. You're just tired in a different location. Most people think exhaustion is physical, that it comes from overwork, from lack of sleep, from poor diet or no exercise. And sometimes it does. But there's another kind of exhaustion. The kind that sleep doesn't fix. The kind that rest doesn't touch. The kind that lingers no matter how much you try to recover. Rumi called this soul fatigue, and he said it comes from one thing, living out of alignment with who you really are. You look at your life from the outside and it makes sense. You have a stable job. Maybe it's not your dream job, but it pays the bills. You have relationships. Maybe they're not deeply fulfilling, but they're familiar. You have a routine. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat, and on paper, it's fine. It's functional. It's what everyone else is doing. But inside, something is wrong. You feel it every day. That quiet, persistent exhaustion that no amount of coffee or motivation can touch. Rumi said that the soul has a language. And that language is energy. When you're living in alignment with your truth, energy flows. You feel alive, present, engaged, even when life is hard. Even when you're working long hours or facing challenges, there's a vitality underneath it all. But when you're living out of alignment, when you're pretending, performing, or suppressing who you really are, the energy stops flowing. It gets blocked, stuck, and that stagnation manifests as exhaustion. You're tired because you're spending your days being someone you're not. Not dramatically, not obviously, but subtly, in 1,000 small ways. You laugh at jokes that aren't funny. You agree with opinions you don't hold. You show up to places you don't want to be. You stay quiet when you want to speak. You speak when you want to stay quiet. You bend. You adapt. You smooth over. You make yourself smaller, quieter, easier. And every time you do, you lose a little more energy. Because pretending is exhausting. And you've been pretending for so long, you don't even realize you're doing it anymore. Rumi wrote that most people are not living their own lives. They're living the life they think they're supposed to live. The life their parents wanted. The life society approves of. The life that looks good from the outside. And in the process, they abandon themselves. Not all at once, but piece by piece. A compromise here. A sacrifice there. A dream postponed. A truth left unspoken. Until one day, they wake up and realize, I don't recognize myself anymore. And that realization, that distance between who they are and who they're pretending to be, that's what drains them. You sit in meetings and nod along. You smile at people you don't connect with. You make plans you don't want to keep. You say yes when everything in you is screaming no. And you tell yourself it's fine. It's just how life works. Everyone does it. But the tiredness doesn't lie. Your body knows. Your soul knows. And the exhaustion is its way of saying, this isn't working. This isn't sustainable. You can't keep living like this. Rumi said that the soul will always tell you the truth, but it doesn't speak in words. It speaks in sensations, in feelings, in energy. And when your life doesn't match your soul, the first thing you feel is fatigue, not anger, not sadness, just a deep, bone-level tiredness that makes everything feel harder than it should be. Because you're not just living your life, you're also maintaining a version of yourself that isn't real. And that maintenance, that constant performance, is what's draining you. You've tried everything. More sleep, better diet, exercise, meditation, therapy, and some of it helps. For a little while. But the exhaustion always comes back. Because the problem isn't your body. It's your life. You're living in a way that requires you to constantly override yourself, to ignore your instincts, to suppress your desires, to silence your voice. And every time you do that, you expend energy. Not the kind of energy that comes back with a good night's sleep. The kind that comes from your core, your essence, your soul. And when you drain that, nothing external can refill it. Rumi taught that alignment is not a luxury. It's a necessity. That when you live in alignment with your truth, you don't have to force things. Life flows. Not perfectly, not without challenges, but with a sense of rightness. A feeling that even when things are hard, they're hard in a way that makes sense. But when you're out of alignment, everything becomes a struggle. Even easy things feel difficult. Even rest feels exhausting. Because you're not just doing the thing. You're also fighting the part of you that doesn't want to do it. You're tired of your job. Not because the work is hard, but because it doesn't mean anything to you. You show up. You perform. You collect the paycheck. But there's no connection. No purpose. No sense that what you're doing matters. And you tell yourself that's normal. That most people don't love their jobs. That work is just work. But Rumi would say that spending 8 hours a day doing something that feels meaningless is one of the fastest ways to exhaust your soul. You're tired of your relationships. Not because the people are bad, but because the connections feel surface level. You talk about nothing. You laugh at things that aren't funny. You pretend to care about topics that bore you. And underneath it all, there's a loneliness. A sense that no one really sees you. That no one knows who you actually are. Because you've never shown them. You've been too busy being the version of yourself they expect. And maintaining that version, that mask, is draining you. You're tired of pretending you're okay when you're not. Tired of saying, I'm fine, when someone asks how you are. Tired of smiling when you feel empty. Tired of showing up when you want to disappear. Tired of being strong when you just want to break. And this tiredness, this deep, relentless exhaustion, it's not weakness. It's not laziness. It's your soul begging you to stop, to drop the act, to let yourself be real. Rumi said that exhaustion is often a sign of suppression. That when you're constantly holding things in, holding yourself together, holding back tears, holding down anger, holding in truth, your energy gets trapped. It can't move. It can't flow. And that stagnation creates fatigue. Not the kind you can sleep off. The kind that lives in your chest, in your throat, in your stomach. The kind that makes you feel heavy, even when you're not doing anything. You're tired because you've been carrying things that aren't yours to carry. Other people's expectations. Other people's emotions. Other people's problems. You've become the person everyone leans on. The one who listens. The one who helps. The one who holds space. And you never complain. You never say no, because you've convinced yourself that your worth is tied to your usefulness, that if you stop giving, people will stop caring. And so you keep giving, even when you have nothing left, even when you're running on empty. And the exhaustion is your body's way of saying, you're not a bottomless well. You need to refill. But you can't refill if you never stop pouring out. Rumi wrote that the soul needs space, that it needs silence, stillness, solitude, not as an escape, but as a return to yourself, to the part of you that exists beneath the roles, the responsibilities, the performances. But most people never give themselves that space. They stay busy. They stay distracted. They fill every moment with noise, with people, with tasks, because they're afraid of what they might feel if they stopped. Afraid of the emptiness, the sadness, the anger, the truth. But Rumi would tell you that the exhaustion won't go away until you face what you've been avoiding, that the tiredness is not the problem. It's the symptom. And treating the symptom without addressing the cause is like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs stitches. It might cover it for a while, but it won't heal it. You're tired because you've been living on autopilot, going through the motions, doing what you're supposed to do, saying what you're supposed to say, being who you're supposed to be. And in the process, you've lost touch with who you actually are, with what you actually want, with what actually matters to you. And that disconnection, that distance between your external life and your internal truth, is what's exhausting you. Rumi said that the soul knows when it's being ignored, and it will keep sending signals until you listen. First, it sends whispers, a quiet feeling of dissatisfaction, a sense that something is off. But most people ignore the whispers, so the soul gets louder. It sends restlessness, anxiety, discomfort, and if those are ignored, it sends exhaustion, deep, unrelenting, soul-crushing exhaustion, because exhaustion is the body's way of forcing you to stop, to slow down, to finally pay attention. You can keep pushing through, keep forcing yourself to function, keep pretending you're fine, but the exhaustion will keep growing. It will take more and more energy just to get through a normal day, until eventually you can't, until your body says, enough, and forces you to stop, through illness, through breakdown, through collapse. Rumi said this doesn't have to happen, that you can choose to stop before you're forced to. You can choose to listen to the exhaustion instead of fighting it. The exhaustion is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's showing you where your life doesn't fit, where you're out of alignment, where you're betraying yourself. And the tiredness won't lift until you make changes. Not surface-level changes, not a vacation or a new hobby, but real changes. Changes that bring you closer to who you actually are. Changes that honor your truth instead of suppressing it. You're tired because you're living small, because you've made yourself fit into spaces that were never meant for you, because you've silenced your voice to keep the peace, because you've abandoned your dreams to meet expectations, because you've chosen safety over authenticity. And Rumi would tell you that this is the most exhausting way to live, because it requires constant effort, constant vigilance, constant suppression, and eventually you run out of energy. Eventually, the soul says, I can't do this anymore. And that's when the real choice appears. You can keep going, keep pretending, keep exhausting yourself. Or you can stop. You can drop the mask. You can speak the truth. You can live the life that actually fits your soul. Not the life that looks good. Not the life that makes sense to others. But the life that feels right to you. Even if it's messy, even if it's harder to explain, even if it disappoints people. Rumi said that the soul will always choose truth over comfort, that it would rather live in honest struggle than comfortable lies. And the exhaustion is proof of that. It's your soul refusing to settle, refusing to keep pretending, refusing to keep living half a life. And the tiredness won't go away until you honor that refusal, until you stop betraying yourself for the sake of looking okay, until you choose alignment over approval. You're not tired because you're weak. You're tired because you're strong, because you've been holding up a version of yourself that isn't real. And that takes immense energy, more energy than most people realize. But you can't hold it forever. Eventually, something has to give. And Rumi would tell you, let it be the mask, not your soul.